I always challenge the notion of using culture and tradition to justify things. So, people say I'm Americanized all the time. And I don't think that's true. I think when you know better, we should do better. So there are some cultures right now, like I've given examples earlier, where girls cannot go to school. There are also cultures that practice something called female genital mutilation, where they take a girl child and they mutilate her. And are these things that should be acceptable in 2022? In the name of culture, we need to challenge our bias that women, first of all, that's the first step, is challenge that bias that women are incapable of doing certain things. And that's why we have women who are overrepresented in poverty and in hunger and in unemployment. And we're not saying men are evil and men are, the cause of all ills against women. And what we're really getting at is, how do we address some of these issues and make sure that women globally have access to these opportunities, make sure that girls can attend school and that they have access to education, making sure that women have access to employment and that they're getting paid fairly for the work that they're doing.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Lost Lagosians. I'm your host, Brother Mike. Today we conclude our series on Afro-feminism. In this week's episode, we look at the role that society plays as a solution to the gender equality issues that we're going to be discussing, and also to things like feminism, especially in Africa. We also talk about the role of leadership and how we can start from the top by having leaders that believe in equality between men and women. We also talk about jobs that are male dominated, like construction jobs, STEM, and how we can help with bridging the gap between men and women. According to salary.com, the gender pay gap is the difference between what men and women make for the same amount of work. Currently, women on average make 82 cents to every dollar that men make. The reality is that according to salary.com, 40% of US households have women as a primary sole earners. Even in jobs like accounting, where women make up 58% of the profession, women are paid 80 cents to every dollar that a man earns. For the educated, women with a doctorate degree earn 32% less than their male counterparts. So for every dollar that a man makes, a woman earns about 68 cents. So there are a lot of statistics that clearly show that there's a gap, not just in wages, but also in how women are treated in terms of how people think about women. Some people think women are weaker than men, and others actually think that women are the inferior sex. So we kind of talk about all those things in this week's episode. Several states in the US have gone forward to enact equal pay laws, salary transparency laws, and the salary history laws. There's the Equal Pay Act, and then the federal and state contractor requirements. There's also one called Title VII, and the whole purpose is to help combat the gender pay gap. We'll go ahead and jump into the show, but before we do, I wanted to thank you guys for being here and spending time with us here at Lost Lagosians. Please don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcast. That goes a long way, and that helps others find the show. That will be highly appreciated if you don't mind doing that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the show. You need hard science and hard facts. Unfortunately, science, there are some things there's no scientific data on, and the results might not be conclusive. So we may never be able to get that fact or that data or that science. We may maybe there's one out there that we've not uncovered yet. So I'll give that to you. What I just wanted to say is that women are built naturally to care for their children. Is their maternal instinct, as well as men who are built to provide and be a provider. That's the African in me that is talking about.
Yes, that is the African in you, because there is no gene, there's no child-caring gene, and there's no provider gene. So once again, this is us internalizing ideas from our cultural socialization, which is okay. Everyone has a right to have certain cultural values and certain beliefs, but that's not a biological difference. That's a social norm. Those are
So
based on
so it's
social
what,
traditions.
yeah, it's what it's what society expects. And what you are
Exactly.
saying is that we are the ones who we have this premonition, something like, blacks are three quarters of men, or black
Mhm.
men are three quarters of the real man, and women are half of the real man, something like that. So it's just what the society, society tells us, and we don't
Mhm.
really have a hard fact. Now I want to swing over to Roe v. Wade, which was recently repealed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Mhm.
Um, some people, the conservatives and the Christians, again, we're not going to be political or anything, but they believe that Roe v. Wade might be part of what has emboldened the feminist movement. So they've been working since 1973. And think about that.
Mhm.
Every president, okay, Roe v. Wade is always on the agenda. They've been trying to do that nonstop until the victory they just had a few weeks ago. So how would you respond to them, or to people who are like, this Roe v. Wade stuff, because that's why they're feminist movement and women empowerment and all that? Or do you think there's no connection between Roe v. Wade and women, or feminism for that matter?
So I think I would be remiss to say that there's no connection, because there are, of course, I think one thing I want to clarify is that there are different, kind of like, I don't want to use the word sex, but even within feminism, there are different types of ideologies, right? So
Wow, you're
there
going
are,
deep now. Like
yeah, so I
most
don't
of
want
us,
to
they're
get
just feminism 101, and we just barely scratch the surface of that.
exactly.
No, but
So
you can if you need to. I mean, some
yeah, I
people,
mean,
we have different spectrum of listeners here. Go on.
yeah. So there's Western feminism, which deals with, their big issue is patriarchy, it's choice, and it's women, women challenging patriarchal norms. Now, there's
Mm-hmm.
also post-colonial feminism, which tends to deal with more of like, what is the experience of a woman of color, a third world woman, a woman coming in to the US maybe from a country in the global south. Those are different, distinct experiences. So what a white woman is going to advocate for when she uses the term women's rights and
Right.
women's empowerment is going to
Mm-hmm.
be different from what me as a Nigerian woman is advocating for when I use the term women's empowerment. So the issues that are closer to my heart are violence against women. It's child marriage. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, the bulk of the issues that I've spoken about earlier, making sure that women have access to education. So for a lot of women in the global south, abortion is not really maybe an issue that's pertinent to them. Now, when you come to the West, yes, abortion is a hot topic issue, because when we talk about patriarchy and a
Mm-hmm.
society where a lot of men have the power, men are making the decision. That's kind of a notion that's being challenged by Western feminism. So I guess to get to your question, my
Mm-hmm.
response to that is I'm a healthcare practitioner. And I know for a fact that access to abortion is a life protecting measure for women who have ectopic pregnancies and other forms of pregnancies that are harmful to that mother, or when the fetus is not a viable fetus. So, from a healthcare perspective, I am someone who believes that there should be certain caveats in a law like that, and that women do need to have access to abortions when needed, especially in a medical setting when it's a life saving precaution. So that's just a personal belief. Now, I know generally Nigerian culture, Nigerian, religion, Christianity is, I don't know about Islam specifically, but I know about Christianity. A lot of the Nigerian Christians, Nigerian doctrines are anti abortion, and they are
Right.
pro life, I think is the word that's being used for the different,
Yes, pro-life.
beliefs, pro life. And, that's their prerogative, and people have a right to that opinion. But I, as a healthcare practitioner who've seen women coming for ectopic pregnancies that need a DNC, which is basically an abortion, I know for a fact that that's a life saving measure for a lot of women.
I think you should run for president in Nigeria, because I don't think you answered my question. You just danced around it. You'd be a very good Nigerian politician, because you just did not answer the question I asked. So let
Oh,
me
that's funny.
try and ask again.
Okay.
Does Roe v. Wade, does it support feminism, or does Roe v. Wade overturning, rather, does the overturn of Roe v. Wade, does it support feminism? I don't think you answered that, doctor. I don't think you answered that question.
Does it support feminism? I
Or
think
does that
that's
embolden, rather, feminism? That was
it
the question, but I
doesn't,
don't think you answered that.
yeah, it doesn't embolden feminism. I mean, it's feminism is it is what it is. Feminists advocate for women's rights. And yes, part of women's rights may be women having a right to abortion if they need that medical intervention for their health or for whatever reason. Um, are those two issues related? Yes, they are related because once again, we're talking about a woman's right to a medical procedure. Now, if you're asking if one has emboldened the other,
Uh-huh.
no, because I feel like the issues are related. So I don't think emboldened is the right term to use, but I think a lot of feminists would say that women should have a right to that medical intervention if they do choose to do that.
Thank you. So conservatives, like we started our this conversation, believe that the feminist movement puts women above men in the sense that women now have choice, and that kind of upsets the structure of society. Even if you go back to the medieval times, the Bible, the man is the head of the house in the New Testament, and also if you go to Islamic faith as well, there are other instances where women are not even, if you go to Saudi Arabia, they have to like cover their head, the hair. They can't. They have this structure that has been put in place for a very, very long time. But I do agree with you that there's a point where society has to start shifting. And that's the kind of shift that, feminists are advocating for, which is let's treat men and women as the same. It's just going to take a very long time to
Mm-hmm.
get to that equilibrium because of how the feminist movements have positioned themselves. I think fundamentally what the feminist movements are advocating for is it's a worthy cause. Things like rape and domestic violence against women. But my mind is kind of like, well, because they are weaker. But feminists are saying no, they are not weaker. Men and women are the same. Like if you guys came out and just told us, okay, this is the situation, let's be honest about it. I think in a place like Nigeria, we'll be able to go farther, or it will make more sense for something like, okay, women, you can't say women are weaker because feminists say men and women are the same. You also,
Women are weaker in what sense, though? Are you talking about physical strength?
as a Nigerian man, the idea is women can make decisions, women are weaker, every woman needs a man. But the feminist movement are like, no, women are not weaker, we're the same as you. You
Why
know,
should anyone believe that women do not have the capacity to make decisions because they were born biologically women?
culturally,
Yeah, but
culturally,
so that's why we
yeah.
need to challenge culture, right? So I'm a firm believer in, I always challenge the notion of using culture and tradition to justify things. So,
Mm.
my people, yes, people say I'm Americanized all the time. And I don't think that's true. I think when you know better, we should do better. So there are some cultures right now, like I've given examples earlier, where women,
Right, right.
girls cannot go to school. There are also cultures that practice something called female genital
Yeah, right.
mutilation, where they take a girl child and they mutilate her clitoris.
Mm-hmm.
And are these things that should be acceptable in 2022? In the name of culture, I believe not. And that's something I
Nobody's
want people.
saying nobody's saying that should. I mean, that definitely is condoned. Nobody's saying that's acceptable.
But
I
it's
see.
all related though. So culture, using culture and tradition as kind of to rationalize or justify societies.
But just so you know, women were behind those decisions. Let me give you another example that's very prevalent in America. For example, is a situation whereby there's a woman who the father is no more in the house. The woman has a boyfriend, but the boyfriend is abusing the daughter because the dad is not around. The mom knows about that, so and the mom just keeps quiet. You see a lot of these things happening. What I'm just trying to say is that ultimately these concerns, they are not behind women. Like the female genital mutilation you talked about, there are women who are behind it, who actually believe in things like that. Even if you go to there was a prince, a Nigerian prince, sorry, one of the sons of I think it's Sultan of Sokoto 2 weeks ago, that just he married two teenage girls. Two girls just got married, but there's the mom behind. I was like, okay, this is the right thing for my son to do. So while we were trying to change society, was it Madeleine Albright who said, "Women, if you don't vote for Clinton, that you're not a real woman," or something like that? So I'm just saying these issues we are trying to address and solve. Women are also contributors to the
Oh
problem.
yeah. And I never said
So,
that's, oh yeah, I never said that's the case. If you remember, I said men are not the problem. It's society. It's
including women.
societal norms that we've
Yeah,
established. And
yeah.
yes, there are women who are perpetuating and propagating these norms. And yes, there are women who will take their child to the whoever is going to mutilate that child. There are women who tell women who are in abusive marriages to stay in those abusive
And
marriages.
the women who marry their 17-year-old or 12-year-old, sorry, the women who marry
Yes,
the 12-year-old children to an
absolutely.
allergy so it can take care of her.
Yes, yes.
So it's so if women are also culprits, I feel like the feminist movement are always saying you men are dogs, men are scum, men are this, men are that, because women are actually part of society as well.
No, so that's, yeah. So once again, I think that's a common misconception. And yes, maybe there are radical feminists out there who believe that men are evil and men are the problem. But there are also people who know that this is not a male issue. This is, once again, a systems structural issues. This is about policies. It's about societal attitudes, cultural attitudes. That's what we need to change, not individual men and women. It's the structure and the system that needs to
So
change.
let me ask you a question, another question. And you're probably gonna be like, "What is this guy talking about?" I'll ask you anyway, just
Mhm.
because there are people that might be wondering. Would you consider roles that require physical strength, for example, as one that should be uh, delineated based on the gender? In other words, if you are in construction, would
Mhm.
you consider, if I'm a construction manager and I hired 99 guys and one girl, is that okay? Or are you basically saying that it doesn't matter strength or no strength, hire women? Because it's a business I'm trying to run. I'm a business
Okay.
manager. I have my company. I need to make profit. At the end of the day, it's the bottom line that matters. And this is what a lot of corporations are looking at. They're also looking at who their stockholders are, their shareholders, who their board is. So my question for you is, so I'm a construction manager. I need strong
Mhm.
men because we're paving the roads of Ohio, for example. I need strong men because it's cold. They got to be strong to be able to lift, 50 pounds of equipment. Am I anti-feminist if I don't hire any woman for that job, or are you advocating that regardless of anything, just give it? Okay, okay. Let me give you an example in Nigeria because again, one more example to make my point. When I was in Nigeria, right, growing up, the bus conductors, they're always men. You can never see a woman bus conductor. Occasionally, there's a red herring, like a black swan. You see a woman who's a conductor, but that woman who's a conductor is like a mole or a boss that she doesn't really have to shout, yaba, 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 which would, she's like standing and she's collecting money. So
Mhm.
technically, women can't really be conductors. So are you saying that should change? I guess, I don't know if that helps paint the picture
Yeah,
better.
I'm saying that if a woman applies for a job to be a construction worker, she should be given serious consideration, and you evaluate her based on whatever criteria, whatever the pre-established criteria are for that job. And then, give her an opportunity. If she can lift that 50 pounds, I don't know if there's like a construction worker test
Yeah.
that they have to do, put her through the test. If she's capable, then hire her.
Okay.
But I think to make, predetermination or to judge based on biological sex, whether someone is competent enough to do a certain job, I think that does a disservice to that person. I consider myself to be a strong woman. I lift a lot of things. There was a time in my past life that I used to lift weights for strength
Mm-hmm.
training. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we can't just assume that women are generally physically weaker. I think that's not true. We need to be able to give women opportunities to also prove that they can do these things based on certain clearly outlined criterias.
I agree with you. I think I'm slowly getting sold. There's just there's just one last question I have, which is that for that role as a conductor who has
Mhm.
to chase the bus, 9 out of 10 times, I'm kind of imagining Lagos now, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the opportunity to test if a woman can chase that bus when when the driver is going. Or if I'm the
Mhm.
driver and you're my conductor, I don't have the opportunity to test that. So, what would you say to me? Because in my mind, cultural tells me women, whatever culturally, and then I also don't have the privilege to be able to test. How would you? Because a lot of this is we don't have time. It's business, it's moving. Even for job interviews, you don't really have time to test that this woman can actually do what men can do. Men can do. So I want to go the safer. Most businesses are risk averse. You don't want to be taking risk or taking chances. So my question to you is, how would you navigate that kind of situation? Besides the talk, let's kind of get into the action.
So I think we need to challenge our bias that women, first of all, that's the first step is challenge that bias that women are incapable of doing certain things. And then we can't circumvent the process. We need to create the space to to make sure that women have access to these opportunities as well. Otherwise, this problem is never going to be solved. We're just kind of like putting a band-aid on it if we're not actually doing the work to create these processes to make sure that we're holding both men and women to the same standards when we are, putting out job application for these jobs, interviewing that person. Do they check all the boxes? Are you going to deny them that job just because they are a woman? I don't think that's right. Once again, I think that's one of the injustices that we're talking about. Because what ends up happening is this woman may potentially not find another job. And that's why we have women who are overrepresented in poverty and in hunger and in unemployment. So these issues are all related. And I think we really need to change our policies, we need to change our processes, we need to create the time and the space to challenge some of these commonly held notions that we kind of perpetuate right now.
So is the role of government. I think what you just said is that government, it starts at the top.
It starts at the top, but I think everyday people we also have a role. If you own a place of business, are you making sure that the women at your
Mm-hmm.
job are getting equal pay for the same work that they're doing, that a man is doing? Pay transparency when it comes to gender equity
Mm-hmm.
pay gap. Pay transparency is something that's always been advocated for, making sure that women have access to information about what a role should be paid for, making sure that you are evaluating women and men on the same terms and same standards. So I think we all have roles to play in our day-to-day lives and in empowering women. How we raise our daughters, how we raise our men, teaching them that violence against women is never okay. We all have a role to play in that.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer because if you look at the current president of the U.S., Joe Biden, he just appointed Justice Ketanji Brown, which is
Hmm.
kind of nice. His VP is
Yes.
also like a woman, and he has a lot of women in his cabinet as well.
Hmm.
So those kind of things, we need leaders. We need leaders that are able to see that, and
Yeah.
leaders that can demonstrate such. Because
Hmm.
I think a lot of this has to be addressed at the top.
Yeah.
Then more importantly, also society has to
Hmm.
also try to address things like this. So as we kind of wrap up, I wanted to give you the last word. I don't know if you have any final thoughts or parting advice or words or knowledge
Yeah.
you'd like to impact on us.
Yes. So I think I really want your listeners and you yourself included to really take some time and reflect on why feminism has such a bad connotation and is associated with such negative things in the African community. And I think when you do a little bit more unpacking, you'll realize that what feminists really want, and when we use the term women empowerment, we're not using that term and saying that we want to empower women at the detriment of men. And we're not saying men are evil and men are, the cause of all ills against women. What we're saying is that there are some structural, systemic issues at play here that's creating a society where women are marginalized and they have access to less resources and less opportunities than men do. And we know that based on data and based on very strong evidence collected by the United Nations, the World Health Organization. And what we're really getting at is how do we address some of these issues and make sure that women globally have access to these opportunities, make sure that girls can attend school and that they have access to education, making sure that women have access to employment and that they're getting paid fairly for the work that they're doing. So I think in its basic sense, that's really what we mean when we're using the term feminism and women empowerment. And that's something I would like to clarify for your listeners.
Wow, that was good. Thank you so much. What I wanted to also add is that there's the role of education. If you don't know what your rights are, you don't know how much power you have. Part of the things that the slave masters did was to make sure that the black slaves couldn't read, because once they can read, they can know what the Bible says about, this master-slave relationship. So there's also the role of education. It comes to mind for me in a place like Africa where a lot of girls that don't even have access to education. So if you're not educated, you cannot challenge societal norms that says women are subordinates to men, which if you're educated, they can start challenging us. Okay, maybe I can also think. Maybe I'm also smart. Maybe I'm actually smarter than this guy. So there's the role that education plays, and I like how you started by saying that the role, part of the things feminism movement fights for is access to education for girls, because once girls are educated, they know what their rights are, and then they cannot just marry any guy that will kind of make them their slave. So or where you even have like spousal rape as another thing, which in Nigeria, some parts of the world, that's kind of accepted. But the feminist movement is like, that's wrong. Rape is rape, and rape should be rape, even if you're in a marital relationship. Very, very great conversation, Dr. Tony. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I think I've learned a thing or two or more. I know, I'm always trying to learn every day, and we all are. And it's always nice to kind of be open to learning and get from people. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If people wanted to follow you like on social media, or if someone wanted to contact you, do you have like a Instagram page or Twitter or anything like that?
I am on Twitter. So I think my Twitter handle, is it what it's called? It's Toyin SKI. So Toyinski, I believe it's what it is. I believe
K. Hey, somebody might reach out to you and say, let's give a speech. Please, we want that, Dr. Tony, we want her to come and give us a speech for women empowerment somewhere. And you are like saying, I believe here.
But yes, that's really the only social media account I have. I don't really have a strong social media presence, unfortunately. So yes, or they can, try to connect with me through you, and feel free to, totally connect me with people.
Yeah, totally.
As they reach out.
So we are at Lost Lagosians on Twitter, Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Tony. I really, really appreciate your time, and hopefully go women or go girls.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, bye. So that's the end.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on. I think I sounded like an idiot.
No, I don't think you did. You did. I mean,
I was like getting kind of hard on you. Yeah, I think I was just. I was also being authentic though. Like, this is what men think. Honestly, forget all this. To like most men, most Nigerian men. And I want to represent that population as well. So in as much as I was trying to tread lightly, I still think it's something that most men in Africa are like, what are you talking about, feminism?